Council meeting with the word of prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like, please feel free to join us. Tonight, I'm going to ask Miss Shawana Rogers from my office to lead us in prayer.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to be able to assemble tonight. We ask, oh God, that you allow our leaders, our city council, our mayor, and everyone to lead us in wisdom on tonight. Lord, allow this meeting to be productive. We ask that you bless those that are watching and those that are here. Allow us to continue to stay safe and healthy. In Jesus' name, amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we call a meeting to order tonight, I know there's some folks here that's wanting to, that are watching at home, and maybe a few out here that are wanting to see what we have planned should the bond issue pass. And so before we start the official meeting, Ms. Felicia is going to show this to the council, and from there we will turn this loose to the public this evening. Bobby usually has that head banging music going on. So he went smooth. So council, if y'all are okay, this is what we'll release to the public. We'll release that tonight, and as you know, the bond issue election is February the 8th. So, yeah. Who did the production work for us on that? Was it, yeah, Craft and Tull? Yeah. Yeah, they did. We'll now call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hawkins? Here. Mr. Grimes? Here. Ms. Tucker? Here. Ms. Mel? Here. Mr. Ledbetter? Here. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jones? Here. Ms. Isby?
You should have received copies of the December 14th and the 28th council minutes. Any corrections, changes, or comments?
Make a motion for approval as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins, it's a long night for you.
Let's shorten her up. Let's do it real quick. How about
There you
that?
go.
First of all, we got resolution setting a public hearing to discuss the closing of the entire alley running west to east through Block 16 of the Shrilly addition, and this is Resolution R2101. I'm sorry, 2201. Man, I thought I was going to start off on the right foot.
Mr. Walden, would you like to come up and address this, please, sir?
Yeah, the applicant, obviously, this is just to set a public hearing, but the applicant is requesting to close the alley. They're wanting to redevelop that site. That's where one of those adult places and some other businesses that are along there, but someone's wanting to redevelop that site, and so necessitate closing the alley at that location.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution to set this public hearing.
I have a motion and a second to set this public meeting for January 25th, 2022, to discuss closing the alley in the Block 16 of the, did you say it Sigley, Mr. Hawkins? Shrilly addition. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Second item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution adopting the organizational rules and procedures for the Conway City Council for the calendar year 2022. And we have a resolution for this item. It's Resolution R2202.
And these are just the organizational rules
It is.
and procedures that you guys have to approve every year.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution for the yearly organizational rules and procedures for the city council.
We didn't make any changes, did we, Mr. Mayor?
No, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Finkenbeiner, do you have any comments? Okay. No changes, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Mills, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Mary, you made a motion, didn't you? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve the annual transportation services for the city of Conway. And we have several contracts, one with Faulkner County Council on the Aging, Boys and Girls Club of Faulkner County, and Independent Living Services before us this evening. And I guess we're just needing to approve these. $92,000 for Faulkner County Council on Aging, $80,000 for the Boys and Girls Club, and $30,000 for Independent Living Services. And Mr. Finkenbinder, is it okay to do these all at one time? Yes. Very good. I'd make a motion that we approve these transportation services.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve these annual transportation services as listed. Yes, ma'am.
One quick thing. I don't think Deborah Robinson is the ED.
She's not.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that
she
needs
Deborah
to be-
retired.
Yeah, so that needs to be corrected.
Okay. Have they made an appointment yet? Do you know? Okay. All right. Okay, we'll get that straightened up. Well, thank you for bringing our attention. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8-0. Deborah has done a tremendous job. She is. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve the nominations for the Planning Commission, Tree Board, Oak Grove Cemetery, and the Central Business Improvement District. The nomination for Planning Commission to serve a 3-year term is Drew Spurgers. For the Conway Tree Board, 3-year terms for Tressie Buchanan, Canton Ford, Josh Draper, and Scott Meek. Those will all run through 2024. In the Central Business District Improvement District, George Covington does not say junior or senior, but that term runs a 6-year term through 2025. And Oak Grove Cemetery, a 5-year term, Mary Kathleen Flanagan Glover, term runs through December of 2026. And I move that we accept these nominations as forwarded to us.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the annual boards and commissions as submitted. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to approve the private club permit for the Mighty Crab of Conway Number 1 to be located at 2104 Hark Rider Street, Suite Number 102, the Mighty Crab. I've not been there yet, but I am really looking forward to making that trip. We do have an ordinance for this item. It's ordinance 02201.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to approve a private club permit for the Mighty Crab of Conway. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Grimes? Aye. Ms. Tucker? Yes. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Isby? Yes. Ms. Mel?
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance accepting and appropriating grant funds received from the Arkansas Division of Aeronautics for the Airport Department. I saw Mr. Bell sitting in the back of here, or standing in the back. I knew that was you. It's your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. This is just accepting some money from the state in the amount of, $215,703 toward our maintenance hangar. And just matching funds, and this accepts the money and puts it in the right line item, appropriates in the correct line item, excuse me.
I make a motion to waive 3 readings.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
That was a nice article. That was good.
She did a really good
Yeah,
job.
it was.
She did a lot of research.
Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel? Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Grimes? Ms. Isby? Yes. Ms. Tucker? Yes. Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Yes. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Don't run off, Mr. Bell. Next, we've got an ordinance appropriating loan proceeds received from Arvest Bank to the Airport Department. And we have an ordinance for this item. It's ordinance 02203.
Okay, this is we borrowed some money from Arvest Bank to match the state funds that we're getting for our T hangar project. I will tell you that this project is coming along very well. It looks like it should be finished, ready for occupancy probably the end of this month. And then our maintenance hangar is coming along well. It should be completed by the end of February. So got a couple of big events coming up.
And it sounds like we've got somebody hired for the maintenance end of it. Is that right?
We do,
Good.
we do,
Very
yeah.
good. Excellent.
But anyway, this is just putting that money in the right spot.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to appropriate funds received from Arvest Bank for the airport. Any further discussion? That's okay.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm talking because of the COVID thing. She
Yes,
just
come
wear a
on out.
mask and come on out?
Come on out.
All right.
Find me.
Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Isby? Yes. Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Ms. Smith? Yes. Mr. Grimes? Ms. Tucker? Yes. Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. I thought you were gonna ask him if you go out there and fly a plane, Theo. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance authorizing reclassification of a position at the airport department. And Mr. Bell, tell us about this.
This is, we've had our administrative assistant out there, has been there about 5 years. You all know him, Lloyd Hartzell. He is very important to the airport. He does the brain work out there, does all the math and just does an amazing job. And we would like to move him from admin 1 to admin 2. That's my request.
Yeah, Lloyd has done a good job at helping us.
He's done a great job.
We, council, at one time, we were concerned about the bond issue and the price that we receive annually from Axiom for leasing that space, because there was gonna be a large number that we had to make up. I think Lloyd figured all that out, and it was a very, very small gap. I think it was about 87,000 he came up with, Jack, that we were actually
I
getting.
think that's about right.
Yeah,
So,
so he's done a good job.
yeah, he
Hey,
really
Jack-
has.
Jack, will this, additional to the salary or reclassification, will this come out of the airport budget?
Yes.
It will, okay.
Yeah, our personnel budget. And as you may know, we'll be looking for a new director as of March 1st. And he's going to be critical to that transition period when somebody qualified comes in after me.
Where you going?
Home.
The beach.
We'll go to the beach
Wherever his
first,
wife
then
tells
home.
him.
Beach.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for adoption and the emergency clause.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause to reclassify one position at the airport. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Tucker? Ms. Isby? Mr. Ledbetter? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And the mercy clause, Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Tucker? Ms. Isby? Mr. Ledbetter? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Those both pass 8-0. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack.
Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance accepting and approving annual bids for the Transportation Department. This is something we do first meeting every year. We get bids for all kind of stuff. And good evening.
Good evening.
Tell us some good stuff.
Okay, well, I have some news. But anyway, no, we received bids. These are our annual material bids for essentially concrete items, ready mixed concrete, concrete pipe culverts, and then various other concrete items, curbing, box tops, and so forth.
Make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance, approving annual bids for Transportation Department. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Ms. Tucker? Ms. Smith? Ms. Isby? Mr. Ledbetter? Mr. Grimes?
Passes 8-0.
Don't expect it to be this easy every time. Watch it.
Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to waive competitive bids for Sagegrass Sewer Main Extension Project.
This is, I'll explain all this. This is a partnership between the city of Conway and Conway Corporation. This is a low to moderate income area. And sewer was supposed to have been extended out there a while back, but it was not. And so Brett and I met on this, and what we'd like to do is we can pay, is it CARES Act, Felicia, this will be coming from? Or rescue? Rescue. We would like to use a small portion of the rescue funds for this. And what Brett would like to do is, instead of people paying the city back a tap fee in the future, because there will be contractors that want to tap onto that and extend it, instead of paying us, they would pay that money into a fund at Conway Corporation that Conway Corporation would keep, and they would use that money in the future to extend water or sewer to low to moderate income neighborhoods. I think it's a good partnership. Yes.
Is this gonna be ready by February, March?
We're just,
I'm talking to the mayor right now.
they said as soon as we get it approved, they'll get it on their schedule. So no, I think they'll get on it pretty quick. But I think this is a good partnership for us to help with some sewer and water extensions in the future.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance along with the emergency clause.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Grimes? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker? Ms. Smith? Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
In the emergency clause, Mr. Grimes? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker? Ms. Smith? Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Those both pass 8-0. And I know you guys know this, Conway Corporation's been a tremendous partner with us. Our engineering department and their engineering department meet regularly to discuss what's going on now and what's going on 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and 4 years down the road. And it's allowed them to get ahead of us in some areas. I think you're gonna see some work commence in downtown Conway in the very near future. So there's some old mains down there they want to get replaced. So, Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance accepting and appropriating funds for the Conway Historic District Commission, 2020 CLG grant reimbursement and for other purposes. And Mr. Walden, you've stepped forward.
Yeah,
Tell us what you know.
their grant cycle numbers are, they're always back a year with that. This is reimbursement, $28,114 from the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. We completed the African American History Context Study, and so it was wrapped up, and all the money that we expended out, the state has reimbursed us for. So this is an ordinance to get that money back.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
This be ordinance 02207. Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Smith? Ms. Tucker?
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at 519 Mitchell Street from R2A to HR. And this was reviewed at the Planning Commission at their meeting on, I'm looking for the date on it, December 20th. And at that time, the vote was 9-0 to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. And James, you want to talk about
Yes,
an
so
HR?
HR zone, that's a zone that was created a number of years ago. So this is rezoning it from R2A, which is large lot duplex, to historic residential. So essentially, historic residential is intended for the areas within Old Conway. It's a smaller lot, single-family residential zone. So what this is being sought for is expressly for the purpose to split an existing, existing lots. They're going to rezone part of it, and they can't meet the lot requirements on that larger lot designation. But we have a zone specific for this area that's specifically to allow for historic residential single-family infill, and that's what they're trying to do in this situation.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna waive the 3 readings.
Okay.
Make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Now I will make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Mel? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Smith? Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Tucker? Mr. Ledbetter? Ms. Isby?
Yes.
That Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at 1225 East German Lane. It presently is zoned O2. The requested zoning is MF1. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on December 20th of 2021. And at that time, the commission voted unanimously to forward this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02209.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Grimes? Aye. Ms. Mel? Aye. Ms. Smith? Yes. Ms. Tucker? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at 766 Hark Street from C3 to C1. This was reviewed at the Planning Commission meeting on December 20 of 2021. And at that time, the commission voted unanimously to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. And we have an ordinance for this item. It's ordinance 02210.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we adopt this ordinance to rezone property located at 766 Hark from C3 to C1. Any further discussion?
Why they want to go that way?
So, the property at 766 Hark it consists of multiple properties. So
Yeah.
item 14 and item 15, those two are linked. It's for First Community Bank. For the actual development of the site, the issues that they have on the site, the Old Conway Overlay Urban District, which the Historic District Commission reviews, covers that, but there's a small issue related to some overhangs. So they have some balconies that would overhang into the right-of-way, which is something that we encourage. That's not allowed in C3. It is allowed in C1. So it's, in essence, is a continuation of downtown in that area. The second rezoning from R2A to C3 is to make the zoning on the rest of their property consistent. So the applicant has stated that they intend to sell they're gonna develop a portion of it and sell a portion of it. But the bank is gonna be wonderful. It's absolutely beautiful, so.
Good questions, good answers. Yeah. Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Aye. Ms. Smith? Yes. Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Aye. Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at 766 Hark Street, part of the continuation of this, from R2A to C3. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting December 20th of 2021. And at that time, the commission voted unanimously to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to read for the item. It's ordinance 02211.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 8-0.
Make a motion for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel? Aye. Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Grimes? Aye. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve a conditional use permit to allow self-storage and boat and RV storage in the TJ zoning district for property at 285 and 291 Highway 65 North. That's headed out of Conway going toward Greenbrier on the west side of the highway, as best I remember. Is that correct?
Yes, so this is the last property on the north side of town that is covered under the jurisdiction of the city. So the TJ zone is an area called territorial jurisdiction. It's a zoning designation that was created some years ago during the height of all the gas drilling. So it's a few properties that are on the north side of town that are outside the city limits. And essentially, any type of any type of use in those areas requires a conditional use permit. So that's why this came through in that. There was no opposition. They were good with all the staff conditions.
And it was unanimous recommendation of approval, sending it to us, but there are 14 conditions here, so make sure that you don't have a 15th or 16th that you'd like to add. And I think we should be good on that, because
I make a motion for approval of this conditional use permit.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this conditional use permit to allow self-storage in a boat and RV in the TJ zoning district. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
This is 8-0. Mr. Hawkins?
And Mr. Mayor, I told you I was gonna hustle.
You did.
Consideration to appeal, this final item, consideration to appeal the Planning Commission denial of a request for a conditional use permit to allow retail restricted in the O2 zoning district for property at 450 Hogan Lane. Let me read this if I could very quickly. Planning Commission met on December 20th, and at that time voted 4 in favor, 3 against, 2 abstentions, which failed the threshold of being able to get to, I think it's 6 positive votes, isn't it? Ms. Tucker?
Well, it's essentially the two abstentions equate to no votes.
No votes.
So it was, in essence, you had 3 no votes and then 2 abstentions. That's 5 and 4 in favor. So that's what resulted in that vote
Okay,
tally.
Very good.
Yeah, and
that's
it
what
changed.
I was remembering.
It changed to being a simple majority, but since there were 2 abstentions, even though the overall number, it did not have a simple majority of the membership there.
Can you maybe tell us what the problem that some of the commissioners did have with this was? Because I've been shopping at this place for years. There just hadn't been a building there, but I've been buying fruits and vegetables and stuff off this location for years.
It's one of my favorite stops.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, they got
So-
good stuff.
And I'll note the applicants are back there if you'd like to hear from them. Essentially, in reviewing this particular application, both staff and planning commission, it came down to, it was asking for restricted retail in a location. So this is not at where it presently has been. They're moving down further down to I think Hogan and College in that area, where we've got kind of an office park setting. So in reviewing that, it wasn't an area where we had any existing retail uses. So that's why, basically, what I said at Planning Commission is I said, based on this, looking at the comprehensive plan doesn't indicate for retail in that area, doesn't indicate for a node of retail in that area. I said, if the Planning Commission votes to approve it, then that would set a precedent, and in future, staff would review it as if retail were appropriate in this area. So the recommendation was more based on the fact that we haven't allowed anything of that type of use in that location up to this point. There was both people there in support of the item, saying, yes, this is numerous property owners in the area that supported it. There were some property owners that said this is an office area and we don't want a retail use within that area. So there were folks on both sides.
And then you have 2 auto parts stores south of there and Walmart that are both retail.
Yeah, and that's, further south, down south of Tucker Creek, yes.
Okay.
Who were the businesses that opposed it? Were they the ones along that corridor there?
I think it was, and I'll, the applicant can probably speak to some of this. They produced letters from numerous property owners surrounding there. I think the main one that I heard that spoke in opposition was someone that held property that doesn't currently have a business there. But I guess they intend to construct at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Would-
Hear from the,
Would y'all like to come up and speak?
So this is so clear, I drove by there, but it's almost directly across from Hartman Animal Hospital.
yeah,
Yes.
Dr. Heath's
Yeah.
office, yeah. Yeah, right next to the bank.
Yeah.
Hey, Stephanie, if you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. Stephanie, Schreckenhofer Days, 950 Hogan Lane, Suite 4 is my office. And I just would like to point out that this isn't currently where Mr. Chadwick has been, but it is actually just 0.3 of a mile from there, so it's really close. And we do have a lot of support around there. The bank, which, Chambers Bank, which would actually be the business sharing and entry into this, has supported. And I have letters from all the supporters. And I have customers that have supported this, and Hartman Animal Clinic and several of the businesses around there. I have support letters from them. I would like to point out, too, that I am the realtor representing Mr. Chadwick, but I also own property there. So I own a building next to Hartman, and I own a building that the back of it faces Chambers on the corner of Hogan and Hogan and College. So I have some skin in the game, so I really do. So if I thought this would be detrimental to renting to my tenants, I most definitely would not be in support of this. But I have not had any negative feedback from any of my tenants or from any of the businesses I've visited with there. So, and the fact that the bank is going to be right there, neighbors with him, and are welcoming this, I feel like speaks volumes. And then the sellers also own more property around that area and adjacent, and so they feel like it's going to be a positive in helping market the other properties.
Stephanie, who exactly was in opposition to this?
Okay, so Dr. Tilley showed up last time, and he has the corner across from Chambers. And he was just concerned about the traffic, but like Mr. Chadwick has been on Hogan for 11 years, just right down the road, and has a great clientele, and I don't think really that should be an issue as far as traffic. I know that Hogan is going to be a main corridor in the future, so there's going to be more traffic coming regardless, but I really don't think Mr. Chadwick's business would do that. Also, Dr. Tilley has, he goes out on Hogan, but he also has one on College, so he was concerned about his elderly patients, but they have 2 entrances and outlets there.
Thank you.
I think there's gonna be less congestion of traffic at the new location than where he was on Hogan. It seems like it was really dicey getting in and out.
Right, I think it will
Sometimes
flow a lot better
So-
and be a really nice addition to that area.
When it says, it looks like there's gonna be sod in the back of the, or on the easternmost portion of this property. I mean, is that natural grass that's gonna be there, or are you gonna have an actual sod farm where you'll be selling sod off of?
That's natural grass. That's how
Okay.
he's going to, yeah, that was part of his plan, is making it aesthetically pleasing for the city.
Another good reason, I think, to put
I got a
this
question.
here.
I can't, well, anyway, I can't get, is there a turn lane right there in that area, or is not?
There's a left-hand turn lane.
Yes,
That's the
there
Know what I
intersection.
mean?
That's the
It's not a
intersection.
center lane, though?
Corner.
Not a center lane?
When the bank was built, going into there, there's already a turning lane for this property in their parking lot.
So they can use that lane to get in and out?
Yes, yes, sir.
James? What were the reason for the 2 abstentions?
I do not recall from the meeting. We've kind of had a problem with commissioners at times abstaining on difficult votes, so that it may have been that. I'm not sure. I don't recall.
Does his conditional use permit run only with this property owner?
No. So it would allow retail at that location in perpetuity. I think there's some important, so you see the site plan, that's essentially I would say step one in the process, so that they would have to develop a, professional site plan, architectural drawings, by an engineer and architect. And I forgot where I was going with that. I'm very sorry.
About was the conditional use.
Oh, but yes, but so the only situation in which the conditional use would lapse, let's say, for instance, in the future, if once it's constructed and it sits there vacant for a very, very long time, that could be a situation where the conditional use would lapse. But no, what I've always told the planning commission is we regulate uses, we don't regulate the people that use the uses. And so the planning commission is more concerned about what's going on inside of the building, what's on the site, and so it doesn't matter who operates it.
Let me ask this question. If we approve this and say for some reason something happens that he's not able to build on it, does it revert back at that point, or is it automatically going to be retail?
Well, the way it was written, it is not, there's not that condition. So let's say if you wanted to entertain a couple conditions, one condition I might say that you might ought to think about is if the conditional use is not utilized within 2 years, it lapses. If the conditional use ceases for a period greater than 2 years, it lapses. Those could be some examples of, I think, two very valuable conditions to have on site.
Did the planning commission just not want this at all, or were they not willing to do this with conditions, with it being just Mr. Chadwick, with it being limited to him?
Honestly, it didn't really get to
that
a
point.
discussion of those. And again, it was, you had one person that wrote a letter in opposition, Dr. Tilley came in opposition, but there were people there that spoke in favor of it. And so I don't think that it really got to that level where
I'm
there's.
just asking because normally they try to work and figure out a way to make it happen with whatever conditions, and I was just curious why they didn't this time.
There are three options. One would be to deny it, one would be to approve as is, or approve with whatever conditions y'all come up with tonight. A third option could be to essentially remand the case back to the planning commission, tell them to come up with some conditions and send it back. So those are three options.
I would be more inclined to do it with conditions here.
Yes.
Me too.
James, can I ask you a question? Restricted retail, could you give us a few examples of other things that could go in restricted retail?
Yes, just why don't I come back in just 2 seconds? I gotta look it up real quick.
Why can we not just restrict it to Mr. Chadwick?
You could restrict it
That's what I
to,
would rather do.
to a food produce stand. Yeah, it could be restricted to that. That would mean that, ultimately,
So if anything
what
else
happens
goes in,
10,
they have to bring it
10,
back.
20 years
Yeah.
down the line, any other type of retail use could come back as some other type of.
That's what I was.
Right,
I agree
that's
with
what I would
Yeah.
agree to.
Okay with that?
Yeah.
Sounds good plan. So what I've heard thus far is condition one would be restricted
To Mr. Chadwick's operation only.
to a produce stand.
To the applicant.
So would that mean, like, if he ever sold the property, then a new property owner would need to bring it back?
Right.
Yes, if they do something other than O2, yes.
Okay.
If they need a conditional use.
Something other than a produce
Okay.
stand. If the use isn't utilized within
2 years.
2
years.
yes.
it's void.
And if it becomes vacant for 2 years.
And if it's vacant for 2 years.
Okay? Good with that. You good?
All right.
Good with that?
I make a motion to grant this conditional use permit with the new conditions added to it that you just stated.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this conditional use with the addition of the conditions that is restricted to the applicant, and if the business should close, and there's a 2-year max on, 2 years for the, okay, right?
Would that, I think it may be better if if it was just restricted to produce stand rather than restricted to Mr. Shadwick. So if it's just narrowed to that singular use of a produce stand, that way.
Okay,
I amend
That protects his investment long-term.
yes,
okay.
I amend my motion.
So the conditions are that it's restricted to use as a produce stand. Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second to approve this. Any further discussion?
Yeah. James, could you answer my question, please? What other restricted retail, or a couple examples of what could be restricted retail? Well,
Oh, yeah. I apologize for not having my coat on me.
Yeah, me too.
It's my code, the zoning code.
Just, I don't need all, of them, just a couple of examples. I mean, just, if you know a few off the top of your head.
I don't, I'm sorry.
All right.
I apologize.
You don't go to bed at night reading these things?
It is a good way to go to bed.
James had to stay home today and babysit. I understand where his mind is. COVID's
We
tough
were
everywhere.
gonna come to blows. The kids were either gonna win or I was. I don't know who won.
You can tell us.
Okay, restricted retail, so antique store, apparel store, bakery, bank, barber shop, bicycle store, pool parlor, bookstore, camera, picture framing, newsstand, optical shop, hobby shop. So it's more sort of a light, small-scale
Okay,
retail.
very good, thank you. That's what I wanted to get to. I'm assuming, I won't put words in your mouth or the planning department's mouth, but the concern I have is, again, this opens us up to other retail down the road. Now, there's a lot of land on Hogan there's still yet to develop, and it will develop out. It certainly will. I can think of several retail types establishments that probably would not want along Hogan. So, this is great, though. There's nothing wrong with this one. There's nothing wrong with a lot of things you said. But again, we need to be careful treading forward down Hogan, so we don't end up with some of the other examples in town. I won't mention that aren't so good now, but I've got no
Agree.
problem with this. Let's tread carefully going forward.
And in the vein of fairness, I asked, Stephanie came up and spoke in favor of it. Is there anyone that would like to speak against this? Okay, council, we've had a motion and a second to approve it with the one condition. If there's no further discussion, Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 8-0.
7.
I'm sorry, 7. Mr. Ledbetter had to go to a county meeting. So when do peaches hit?
Get more corn.
I'm a regular there. All right, thank you, Mr. Hawkins. The last item tonight is Conway Police Department's resolution accepting a grant received from the Department of Justice for the Conway Police Department. And Mr. Chief Tapley, if you would hang around after this meeting, I need to visit with you briefly.
Hello.
Hello.
So as he said, this is a grant from the Department of Justice. In particular, what this grant is about is a mental health initiative. I've talked to several of you throughout the last year or two about mental health problems that we have in our community and how we could address them. And we've had a lot of good discussion. This is our way of, the police department's way of trying to address this. Back in July, Sergeant Johnson, who's here tonight to answer any questions you might have, applied for this grant. This is to build a co-responder model within the police department. That would be so that we have a mental health worker that would respond to certain types of calls with a police officer to help facilitate interaction, also to be able to follow up after the call to ensure that the person would get the correct resources that they need. We found out in December that we were awarded this grant, one of 36 agencies nationwide. So we're really excited about it. It is a matching grant, as you see. 542,500 would be the amount that of the grant. Our matching part could be up to 192,875. We don't expect that we will use all of that, but that would be the maximum if we spent every penny that they gave us. But based upon some of the hurdles that we see, we don't expect that we will be able to employ people quick enough to use all of the grants, so I don't think we'll be using all of that. I will tell you that this is a pilot program. We are going to learn as we go because we don't fully understand. This is something new to us, but we are excited about the opportunity. As I've told you all before, we don't know the solution, but we do have to work toward it, and this is the way we work toward it.
When Chief Tapley and I visited about this a while back, it's very exciting because, as he said, it's a pilot program, so other departments around the nation are going to be watching Conway Police Department, see how this works. And Chief Tapley's been working towards this goal for quite some time, and we knew that some folks were wanting us to do something immediately, but like everything else, it takes patience, and Chief and his office and the sergeant have done an excellent job.
And I appreciate that. I will tell you, no doubt about it, we would not be where we are today without Sergeant Johnson.
Agreed.
He is the one that spearheaded this. He applied for the grant. He has been there every step of the way. And without him, we would not be here tonight talking about this grant.
Sergeant Johnson, the chief, has really told us how great a job you're doing, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I've been seeing a lot of other cities trying to do the same thing, and it's good for us to be in the lead, not a follow on this program, because it could really be a help to, like you said, we have a lot of problems.
We do. And we're reaching out to other places across the nation that have instituted this before. We're looking at their policies and their practices, and we will model after them, but then we will also model it to the uniqueness of our community.
Well, this speaks highly of not only you and Sergeant Johnson, but your police department and your personnel, and we appreciate the great job y'all do.
Thank you.
I make a motion for the adoption of the resolution. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution for the Conway Police Department to receive a grant from the Department of Justice. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
This will be Resolution R-2203. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Chief, I need to just
Thank
visit you
you.
about something minor, if you would hang around just a second. Council, that's all I have tonight.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.